All right, welcome back. A live look here again as the Commitment to America speech continues. Kevin McCarthy, House Minority Leader, rolling out the GOP's Commitment to America, essentially a priority list moving forward, as it's widely expected that Republicans would take back the House through the election in November. Obviously, it would take place in January. It seems to be somewhat of a town hall style here as you see ones that are in attendance being able to ask questions to Steve Scalise, the House Minority Whip, Kevin McCarthy, Elise Stefanik as well being there. One of the things, and we dipped in earlier, so if you missed some of it, you may be wondering, one of the biggest moments, he talked about repealing the 87,000 IRS agents that were implemented within the Inflation Reduction Act. Again, would that be able to happen? Again, of course, with President Biden still in the White House, he would have veto power. The president also talked about that on Twitter, saying he would have his pen essentially ready. But he also touched on defunding of police, fentanyl, the border crisis as well, and a one-party control system where Democrats control the White House, the Senate, and the House. And again, you see Guy Reschenthaler, Congressman from Pennsylvania as well. We'll continue to monitor this. I believe we're going to listen live for just a bit here. Okay, we'll move on from that. Meanwhile, as President Biden's 60 Minutes interview continues to haunt him, his pandemic is over comments dividing his own regime. Watch.
What was your reaction when you heard President Biden say the pandemic is over? And what do you think of that?
You know, here's what I can tell you. We're in a different place. Schools are open and businesses are open.
But the pandemic is not over from your perspective?
Well, we continue to encourage people to do all the things that they can do to protect themselves. We have the tools right now to protect yourself.
All right, I'll take that as a no.
Again, a lot of reaction coming not only from members of his own party, obviously the media as well, pushing back in regards to the pandemic being over, because then emergency powers would no longer be in effect, but they still are. Turning to America's schools this week, Banned Books Week, celebrating the freedom to read. The week began in the early 80s in response to a sudden surge in the number of challenges to books in schools, bookstores, libraries. Well, this week, First Lady Jill Biden was asked about her thought on book banning. Here's that moment.
Where's the line, in your opinion, with how much of a say parents should have when it comes to what their kids are learning in school?
Well, I think with the pandemic, parents saw how hard teachers work and how difficult this job really is. And I think if they work together in their school districts and decide what they want with their curriculum.
Is there a balance between, this book should be in the library, this book is under review?
All books should be in the library. All books. This is America. We don't ban books.
Well, one Virginia mom has been on the forefront of challenging books in her children's schools and what she deems inappropriate. Watch.
Both of these books include pedophilia, sex between men and boys. Both books describe different acts. One book describes a 4th grade boy performing oral sex on an adult male. The other book has detailed illustrations of a man having sex with a boy.
Well, that was a piece of that moment. Stacy Langton last year at her school board meeting, and the Fairfax, Virginia parent joining us live now. Again, they're in Virginia. Something that has been at the forefront of a lot of politics, as you know. Governor Glenn Youngkin being able to pull out a win there, and that's in that your state. Fairfax County playing a large role. I know there's been a while since that moment on camera that you had there with the school board. Describe where you are today versus that moment. Have things changed?
Well, no, things haven't changed in any sense at all with regard to the presence of the books in the school libraries. All of those types of books are still there. The book I referenced last September 23rd, which was Genderqueer and Lawn Boy, still sit on the shelves in our middle schools, still accessible to kids as young as age 12. And then a third book, which I challenged in December at the school board meeting, called All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, that sits on the shelf too. And all of these books are completely X-rated. They depict pedophilia, as I mentioned originally. They depict molestation in George M. Johnson's case, and it was actually incestuous. It was his cousin who was his sexual abuser. And, you know, I've been in this fight now for a year, and I was absolutely floored by the First Lady Jill Biden's remarks last Tuesday when she said all books should be in the library. And I felt like, has she seen the images? Has she read George M. Johnson's book? She thinks that should be accessible to children.
Sure, and she's a school teacher as well. You would think she'd be well versed on what is in some libraries and what is in some classrooms. I know that you talk about your fight, and I just want to make sure as we look at that moment there, Jill Biden responding to your to talking about banning books. But I wanted to tell the viewers about your fight, and what this is a work to get legislation passed, working with Republican lawmakers, because they're pushing for new state laws that would require Virginia schools to put a parental advisory warning sticker on the cover of those books, mainly like the ones that you've seen. And I believe it's called PAW Print legislation, as we look at the books you referenced. Tell me about this.
Yes, that's correct. Last January, my organization, which I founded, mamagrizzly.org, you can follow me there, or on Twitter at mamagrizzly.org, I decided to create a warning label similar to what Tipper Gore did back in the 90s, because her fight back in the 80s, well, actually it was the 80s, was against pornography in the music industry, and she won the battle. That's the reason why we have parental advisory warnings to this day on music albums. And I thought, we don't have anything like that for books. So in the meantime, because it's going to be a longer battle to get these books removed from the libraries, there should be some type of visible warning label to parents so that if a book comes home in a backpack, they can see, hey, there's something in here. So the acronym is PAW, Parental Advisory Warning, and I called the label PAW Prints. And I'm working with Delegate Tim Anderson here in Virginia, and we're going to try and, you know, push this through. We'll get maybe a few Dems who would be willing to vote with the Republicans on this, because I think this is not really a political issue, that there should be a label. We have labels on, you know, everything, music, video games, films. We should have it for books.
Sure, TVMA, right? If you're watching something that has something racy in it, it'll be TVMA or TV-14 if you're watching that. Obviously, even on news broadcasts, right? We say we want to warn you. Yeah, this could be disturbing. I wanted to hone in on that, if you will, because not everyone agrees with the proposed legislation. I'll show you Senator Ghazala Hashmi. Watch this.
I'm concerned about this subset of parents who think that they can legislate what children are reading. Overwhelmingly, the books that we see targeted are by authors of minority communities or by LGBTQ authors.
So she goes back to targeting. Your comment on that?
Well, we're not targeting any authors. We're certainly not targeting any particular community. There are books in the library that are of a heterosexual, sexually graphic nature. So I would ask Senator Hashmi, does she oppose the labeling of the music industry's products? Does she oppose the labeling of the film industry's products? Does she oppose the labeling of the video game industry's products? If she doesn't have a problem with that, why would she have a problem with putting the same type of parental advisory warning label on books?
Did you take that photo, or is that something that we had, that read banned books? I just saw that. That kind of caught my eye.
I took that photo yesterday. I was actually at Tyson Center Mall yesterday here in Virginia, and that was in the Barnes & Noble. And if you see the sign there at the top of the display, it says read banned books, and it has genderqueer at the bottom, and it's got all boys aren't blue in the center. And I thought, wow, that's unbelievable. Here we are, you know, they're actively promoting this type of thing to children. Yeah,
it's not just on the shelves. Now it's being encouraged. And I forget, I worked in retail, but there's a name for it when it's sitting on the end of a shelf like that. But again, the encouragement of it. So you're simply at a point where you're saying, hey, look, you don't have to ban it, but now let's at least put a label on it. I mean, is that where you are now?
Right. I mean, I think that's a bigger legal battle. So what needs to happen ultimately is we have laws on the books against obscenity in the presence of minors. The problem is we have a law which has essentially an exemption for schools. So it doesn't make sense, does it, that you can't show this type of material anywhere out in town to a child? You would be arrested, but you can get away with it in a school library. So that's just a bigger legal battle to have that word schools stricken. That law would have to be amended. I think that in the meantime, it might be an easier battle to get them at least labeled until we can, ultimately remove the pornographic materials from our public school libraries.
End caps, by the way, is the name of it.
End caps.
End caps. There it is. I knew we would get it. Stacy Langton joining us live here with that and an update. We appreciate that, Stacy. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, if you think rush hour